Yeah, basically, they're finally admitting they're finally admitting the fact that Stonehenge was built by black people. Um, I've done many videos on this, saying that the original British people were black people, and how Stonehenge is specifically African. It's like worship of the constellation, but the stones somehow like represent Africa, and yeah, it's nothing new. We knew this all along. It's been written in the books. It's just hidden knowledge that, you know, at the time that Stonehenge was built, the people of Britain were black. Common sense. Like, we know this. We know this. We know that the original natives of Britannia were black people. It's nothing new. I don't understand why they're bringing this out now. I know we're approaching end days and stuff. Um, and they're starting to reveal it, but let me just show you the amount of articles that they finally admit. Okay, so look, were the builders of Stonehenge black? So we've got one here. Stop shouting. So we got um, quite a few articles highlighting this, and we have GB News. We even have Daily Mail. Britons were mostly black 5,000 years ago. Oh, it's just like they're so annoying. Britons, including ones who built Stonehenge, were mostly black 5,000 years ago. Duh. Like, this is not, should not be a revelation. This is common sense. I've been saying this, but they make us out to be like some sort of Afrocentrics. Britons were mostly black. Like, this is so insulting. Like, we know this. We know, like, honestly, um, they know it, but they've been hiding this knowledge. And I've done videos on this. I've read books about it. There's accounts of the native black Britons of this country being wiped out, being battered, being enslaved, getting on a boat, running away, hiding in the forest. Like, they got massacred. They went through so much, and then quite a lot of them subdued and just accepted defeat and slavery. Like, they literally mingled with these oppressors, invaders that came in and destroyed them. Like, they went through so much. And I've done a video a couple of years ago talking about how, when you walk like on the ground of this island, you can sense like the bloodthirsty, like you can sense like, because they're obviously buried in the ground, like you can sense, when we walk on the ground, we feel this energy of these defeated native black Brits, because obviously they're more related to us black people, and it's almost like they're communicating on the ground. I've said it before, and I've said it, yeah, and I honestly believe it's true. I believe that when we walk on the ground, we have like some sort of tremor, and not only that, the white Brits have been mixed up with them, and you can see it in their faces. Like, you can see black people trying to come out their faces. Like, you can see the black presence in them because they've been mingled and disappeared. So yeah, so it's an interesting concept. So it says here the Britons responsible for building of the iconic Stonehenge were probably black people. A study suggests that data from 348 ancient genomes gathered from across Eurasia have been reconstructed by scientists at the University of Ferrara in Italy, which shows almost all Europeans had dark skin until around 3,000 years ago. With Stonehenge just outside the town of Glastonbury being constructed around 5,000 years ago, experts have said we can assume the builders had dark skin. Until around 1,700 years ago, the majority of Europeans had dark skin. The authors of the study said, adding that most of the ancient Greeks and Romans and Britons who built Stonehenge had dark skin, eyes, and hair. The study confirms that the shift to lighter skin, thanks to the movement of people to higher latitudes and more vitamin D intake, was slower than previously thought. Experts are still unsure why the change from darker to light skin was so slow. However, scientists believe farmers may have compensations for vitamin D deficiencies in their diet with accessible sources such as milk and meat. Absolute bullshit. That's not what happened. They turned white because of invaders. Invaders came and engulfed Europe. Okay, they came at a time and they literally like took over the civilization there, and they assumed their identity. They took over their identity and enslaved the original people of every land of Europe. That's what happened. It says it in the Book of Jubilees. They came in a mass war like invasion, and they took on their identity, mingled with them. So, in terms of biblical history, that would be when Esau and his descendants went over to Europe and subdued the populations. So it talks about it in the Bible. The Edomites came into Japheth's territory because Europe was originally Japheth's territory, and the Edomites took over it. So I think they were Chittim, they were known as Chittim. They came via Chittim, which would have been Turkey, not Turkey, Cyprus. And from Cyprus, they spread out and they became the Romans. So, like, they came from Edom, then they took over the original civilization of Greek. So the Romans took over Greece, and then they spread out and took over. So basically, they came into Italy and took over that society, um, and then they spread out and invaded other parts of Europe. Um, yeah, so and then when they became basically the other whites, the Germanic whites, they weren't as civilized in the times of the white Romans, so the Edomites. They then were trained by the Romans, who then took over the Roman Empire, and they took over the empire, and then that's how like they spread over like the territories, and then yeah, so the Germanics then basically took over, and then there was like a whole bunch of other white people who came from like China East, like a horde of fighting white people, wild from Eastern Europe with fur and all sorts of weapons. So like, and then yeah, that's how Europe became dominated basically. So let's read another article. Let's see what it says. So yeah, Sylvia Girotta, one of the scientists, told the journalist the people who built Stonehenge probably had dark features. In other words, they were black. Uh, the new study from the University of Ferrera Rocher, is that where the chocolate comes from? Ferrera Rocher, oh, published in the online journal bioRxiv, analyzed ancient DNA from 348 people who died across Eurasia between, wow, that's a long time ago, 45,000 or 1,700 years ago. It found a more or less steady shift during the time from dark to light hair, occurring at a slower rate than previously been suspected. On the one hand, there is a reaction against it. Okay, so while this insight into timing is new, the idea of darker skinned people living in ancient Britain is not, but it's contentious. On the one hand, there's a reaction against it with claims that the notion is inspired by wokery. Oh, God, they always call anyone black woke. There are many vocal proponents of a belief in white indigenous Britons, which never existed, by the way. I've never believed that. I always knew that was false. And white people who believe that are cringe and so full of themselves. And like, it's just so ridiculous that they would even believe in that. Well, not, there's nothing indigenous about them in Europe. On the other hand, are people among whom I count several archaeological colleagues who welcome the DNA research for the very reason that it appears to undermine the indigenous white narrative. Ha ha, ha ha, you fools, you educated fools. See? See, how do you feel about that? Yeah, because the truth finally comes out during the end days that you're all a bunch of liars and you must feel really silly to believe that so called Britons were indigenously white. They were never. So then it says here, Atinuke, an award-winning Nigerian-born author, recently wrote brilliant Black British history, beautifully illustrated by Kingsley Nimbachi. It won the 2024 British Book Awards Book of the Year for children's non-fiction. The first Britons, writes Atinuke, like all Western Europeans in those days, were black, as were the people who built Stonehenge. Later came the Celts, who were white migrants enslaved by further immigrants, important black and white Romans. Both of these arguments are wrong. The racial terms white or black are tied to the US history of slavery and the civil rights movement on contemporary issues of African American politics. They are shut up. They are irrelevant when discussing earlier societies. Ancient DNA shows it's wrong to think of early people in Britain as white in the sense that they were pale skinned because they were mostly darker. But black, note the capital B, doesn't work either. Dark skinned, black haired people living in Britain 10,000 years ago had European ancestry. This is so dumb. Like, again, the Spectator are just written by racist old white men. The fact that they're saying they're not African. Humans came from Africa, you dumbo, you stupid man. Like, even the fact that they have written this article just shows their complete stupidity. The first humans came from Africa and they left and they went on and populate the rest of the whole world. The whole world was African, believe it or not, because so that obviously they would be black. So the fact that the anti-blackness has been seeped into their psyche of years of brainwashing, they just cannot accept themselves to be associated with the original Homo sapien who came from Africa. You know, because they think that they've evolved higher. I mean, they think they've evolved and lost their melanin in their process makes them better than everyone else, when melanin is a good thing. But obviously, they've made melanin a bad thing, and they've made themselves, which is a recessive gene, white, better, which is not, scientifically is not. How did this come about? In the course of human evolution. Again, here's the thing, they're so obsessed with evolution, so stupid. Human evolution, shut up. There was no that we did not come from monkeys. Like, they have this sick mentality that they came from animals and they somehow were evolved a lot more by, you know, becoming more paler and losing their melanin in their process. They think they're better. So, you know, whoever wrote this is an idiot. It says, in the course of human evolution, body hair and skin color had to choose between admitting too much sunlight, bold and pale, losing vitamin B9, important for a successful pregnancy, and too little and dark, resulting in insufficient vitamin D, unhealthy bones and muscles. Modern humans evolved in Africa. No, they did. It's just stupid. And later started perhaps as much as 200 years ago, colonized parts of the world with less sun. That time the climate was hot, Dumbo. Arriving in Britain 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, as Atunike puts it, found rainy islands in the North Sea and had no spices to make food taste wonderful, other things being equal. This explains the gradual fading of skin and hair that the Ferrara study has found across Eurasia. But the history of ancient people in Britain is not just about colour. More than anything, it's about movement. Hunter gatherers who came from across Europe, not Africa, colonized Britain after the Ice Age ended 12,000 years ago. Their poster boy is Cheddar Man, whose DNA paints as a possessing dark or black skin, dark hair, blue green eyes. His descendants and their lifestyle disappeared quite suddenly when slightly paler immigrant farmers came into the boats to settle 6,000 years ago. Their descendants were the people who created Stonehenge. They, in turn, were largely overwhelmed by more migrants with yet paler skin 4,500 years ago. And the same again occurred around 3,000 years ago. And that's before we get to Romans, who did include some dark-skinned Africans, Vikings, who might have brought some North Africans in Northern Europe, and so on. The very idea of indigenous Britain as some kind of ancestor for modern people, whatever the skin color, is meaningless. It's a moving target. People change over the millennia. Very little or any human DNA from time or Stonehenge, for example, lives on today. Neither were the first Britons. Yeah, because they got massacred and thrown out the island by the invaders with clubs. Yeah, burning down their villages. Yeah, turning them into um, making them hide in forests, fighting guerrilla warfare, and being chucked out the island, dashed on the sea. What do you think St. Patrick did? He killed the snakes. The snakes are Africans. The snakes are Egyptians. Hello? That's the way they do things. That's the way white people colonize land, is by exterminating the people that live there, wiping them out, taking on their culture, taking on their identity, and basically pretending that they were there all along. It's written in the book. I've read the book of Marjorie Kemp, the way the Anglo-Saxons, the white people came here. They massacred a whole bunch of native black Brits, and they took on their identity, and she even says it. Marjorie Kemp said it. She's a English mystic, and she said how, you know, um, they even said it at the time because they were Christian then, and they said God enlarged their people by letting them subdue the people that they took over their lands, and they took on their identity. So it's written, and it says, that they had no immediate African ancestors. That's just so stupid. How can they be black and not have any African ancestry? The denial and the cognitive dissonance is absolutely shocking. This just screams anti-blackness because he grew up, whoever wrote this, Mike Pitts. Mike Pitts, you come from the pit of hell. You chat absolute shit. He went to private school. He just cannot bring himself to be closer to. First of all, you are so far removed from the original African, so you don't have to worry about anything. It's just that he seems so disgusted to even believe this because it's not what he grew up, learning about. But the fact that he says there's no immediate African ancestry is just ridiculous. Honestly, some of these white racists would rather be closer to Neanderthals than actual African human beings, honestly. What the DNA tells us, along with all the richness of the archaeology, past lives with ever more discoveries, is that movement, migration, and even occasional population replacement were a defining part of our island's long history. The more such studies as this new one are complete, the closer we get to the real lives. No, you just denied everything. Like, you're not happy. You're not happy with the study. You don't believe in it. So yeah, let's just have a look at what the Daily Mail, the most notorious racist paper, has to say about the fact that the native population of Britain were black. And we know this. We have evidence. We have the books. We have the historical things. They went around smashing all the evidence, deleting all the pictures. Henry VIII, went around smashing images of black people. There was loads of images before the Reformation, but Cromwell and Henry VIII, the most racist, anti-black people, went around smashing all images of black people, and started again with the whole Renaissance movement. That's their way of completely whitewashing the history of Black Europe, and that's what it was. Whitewash, a whitewash. The Renaissance needs to be called a whole whitewash. The Britons responsible for the building of the iconic Stonehenge were probably black, as studies suggested. So this is Daily Mail. I'm going to have a look at the comments because I'm sure that's going to ruffle a lot of feathers. Yeah, so the Italian woman clearly says everybody was black then. Like they keep finding more and more dark skinned people, like all the people are dark skinned, and it just irritates them. And now they've had to admit this. Now let's read the comments. British were mostly black. the, this news outlet just gets more and more wokey. What a load of cobblers. Ha ha. Let's see the racists just let's just see them feel absolutely annoyed that these so-called intellectual people are finally giving, making it clear that the original Black Brits, the original Brits on this island were Black people. It is really, really annoying them, and you can tell, they feel so anti-Black about it. They call everybody woke, they just cannot accept it. They think it's false, but more and more scientists, and every time they find a Black person that's been pulled out the earth of this island, they always come out Black, and they don't even want to admit that. But the fact that people, these racists, even though these people are clearly Black, they say, well, they may be Black, but they're not from Africa, as if Africa is like a terrible thing. I'm sorry, but Europe worshipped Africa. Like the original Brits worshipped Africa, like the original deities. Like if you know what the religion was always honoring their origin, which is Africa. Like, the first queen on this island was an African princess. The snakes, the blacks, their religion was ancient Egyptian. So Africa was very, very important to them. Africa's like heaven on earth. If they loved it, the ancients loved Africa. But what we have now is a system where people just like dismiss Africa and disrespect Africa. Like, they admit that the people that they pull out the ground are Black people, but they refuse to believe that they're from Africa. They're just Black, but then they're from Asia. But it's like, and it's so weird how anti-Black they are. Like they cannot admit that they originate from Africa. And the ancient Brits, the ancient Europeans always honored Africa. Like their religion was a fat Black woman, Lady Gubla, who was a deity, a female deity of fertility, and they worshipped her. She represented Mother Earth, and that was the religion. Now we see these same people who disrespect Black women, who mistreat them, especially fat Black women. Oh my God, like they've just gone against. They're so anti, and the ancient Europeans, the ancient native Europeans were completely Black and worshipped Africa and viewed Africa as a place of heaven. And they even honored the Nile. Like they all knew about the Nile flood and how, it gave birth to the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea used to be called the African Sea, but then they changed that when the takeover of the whites, when they took over the world, they started changing names on continents, making sure that Africa's not respected and changing names of the continent. And that's what we see. And all these comments are just full of such anti-Blackness and hate, which is just infested in the UK and the rest of Europe, because there is a bad spirit here where they just disrespect Africa. And And this is just evidence of, what we see in the people, like the years of anti-blackness. It just has spread on the normal people. And the only way, do you know what I mean? Like, the Hebrews used to come here and just, the only good thing about these islands was extracting metal, tin, because the ancient world was in Africa. That's where it was popping. And it was, Europe was colonized by Africa. And you had merchants from Africa coming here because it was their colony, literally extracting tin and using it for their weapons. And that was all it was good for. And they looked up to Africa as a place of culture, as a place of power and privilege and gold and everything. And it's a complete thing. It's like they've really turned it around, and we see it in the comments. Can anyone imagine a huge number of people required to build this massive structure by hand? Could anyone imagine the number of black people actually working? So you see what I mean? It's just like, this is just so dumb. Like, for them to say that when black people are the most mathematical people, they invented maths, they built the pyramids, and for them to feel that, it's just so sad. Like, I think the universe needs to see the anti-blackness on this island, how evil it is and how it's disgusting. Don't say that too loud, but black people don't like to think they have any white blood in them. They get very upset if you insinuate it. That's the other way around, love. Britons were mostly black 5,000 years ago. They're mostly black today, so nothing has changed. Ha ha. Perfect. Couldn't have said it better. Stonehenge is near Salisbury. It's 50 miles and over away from Glastonbury. You have to worry about the content of something. You cannot even look up Stonehenge. If this is actually true, how long before some woke idiot damages it or tries to demolish it? Stupid. Since man first evolved in Africa, okay, this is another thing with white people. They always talk about how they evolved from monkeys. It's so dumb, and like the whole racist thing is they think that they're a better evolved human because they've lost their melanin. Like this is how dumb the thinking is. Dumb. Like, to lose your melanin does not make you a better person. It means you're recessive. It's that you're faulty. You're faulty. You're supposed to have melanin to protect yourself from the skin. And to actually think that you evolved better, it just shows you the level of like intellect. Like, melanin is connected to the brain. Like, we hear music differently, we taste food differently, um, we think differently. So yeah, that whole evolving thing is it's sad, it's pathetic. I think it's safe to say they were all black. They all were black. Then they migrated towards the poles and their skin slowly became lighter. It's not really a surprise. I don't believe that. That's wrong. No, the invaders made them white. Africans wasn't always where it is now. Okay, this is another dumbness. Okay, this is a weird comment. Africans wasn't always where it is now, and the UK wasn't where it is now. The landmass and continents has moved around and are still moving due to tectonic plates. Maybe when mankind first evolved, Africa was in a cooler climate, so the first men. Okay, this is just dumb. This is just really dumb, and this is the level of dumbness. Okay, this is beyond dumb. Okay, there's dumb and then there's damn, dumber, dumb, dumb, mate. White people hadn't been invented then, of course. Yeah, that's true. Just a few stones, nothing more. It's a crap building. I like this one. This is like a deflated racist. It's a crap building anyway. Didn't even put a roof on it. That's funny. And Africa was once populated entirely by white, intelligent, peaceful race. Never. They would be black. Showers hadn't been invented back then. That's just pathetic. Yeah, and that's just dumb. With climate change and heat waves in the future, having darker skin pigment will inevitably, which will be inevitable and necessary to survive. Love it. We can pay compensations to ourselves then. Okay. Again, they just call it woke. Whilst most on here are taking issue with skin colour, I have a problem with a more obvious error in this article, with Stonehenge just outside the town of Glastonbury. No, it's not. Famously just outside the city of Salisbury and even closer to the town of Amesbury. Oh dear, slippery slop, here we go. It's reparation time. They were never going to be white, never. Fake news, no way were they black. It will upset too many on here. They can be any colour, but not black or brown. Ha ha, that's so funny. Gemma, I don't wish to be rude about female navigation skills, but when I last drove down. Anyway, that's just a quick snippet on this sort of news about the fact that Stonehenge was discovered to have had been built by black people, and so was the rest of Europe. They found too many people of black heritage, black skin, and they just didn't want to admit it. But now the scientists in these universities, this one was in Italy, are saying that the original inhabitants of Europe were black people, and it's true, they were. They were black people, and um, yeah, they got taken over, and clearly there's only a few left. A lot got enslaved during the transatlantic slavery. They all got, yeah, enslaved, and yeah, a lot were also sent to the colonies, wherever it was that there were colonies, far end of the earth. So yeah, and there's just a lot died and a lot mixed up with the native population, and they're in their blood. And that's it. But yeah, I just thought I'll do a quick video on this. Thank you.